Welcome to the Rick Tell in the Box webcast. Today's special guest, Mr. John Oram. Hi, everyone. This is part one of my interview with audio legend John Oram. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Our very special guest today is John Oram, whose audio designs have garnered 23 Technical Excellence and Creativity Awards, and who has been dubbed the father of British EQ. Let me give a very special warm welcome to Mr. John Oram.
Hey, well, thank you, Rick. It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to everybody.
Well, it's our pleasure because you are one of the most important audio designers in the history of recording music. So I really respect your career and all the work you've done. It's just exciting just to ask you these questions. So let's get started, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I understand as a young man you played drums, and guess what? So did I. My first band, I was the drummer. I personally loved Keith Moon. Crazy
yeah,
Keith
of course. Boy.
But anyway, what were your musical influences when you played drums and back then?
It may sound strange, but we have an organization in England, it's probably worldwide, I'm not sure, called the Boys Brigade. And it's like the Scouts, but it's a little bit more formal. And I started off with them, age 11. Let me shut this other phone up here a minute. It's a bit noisy, isn't it? Yeah, I had a great time there. I was bugged, if you like, by the sound of military drums. There's a road marching band. And I was 11 and I got intrigued. I used to walk along the side of the band while they were playing. And it started off when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10. And I said, how old can I be when I join? And they said, you've got to be 11. And it was a great start because I learned a lot about music. They taught me to read music for drums, which was invaluable because I went into professional drumming. By the time I was 14, I was playing in studios. And there weren't many of them then in those days. It was we had about 6 studios in England. That's it. And but I love the thing about rhythm. And as I say, I learned to read, and so that was useful. I got my head around dots on drums, and of course I learned all the rudiments. So flams and drags and paradiddles and single stroke and double stroke rolls and all this stuff was taught. And the great thing about road work, Rick, I'm sure you would know, is that when you're marching, you're sort of a natural metronome, and so your feet are going, and so it's very hard to play out of time. And so I learned a lot about rhythm, and I got involved then with a little group. And at 13, I had a little band. We were playing, the rock and roll thing, and of course we had. Not too many artists around. Of course, this was pre the Beatles era. This was the Shadows, Cliff Richards and the Shadows, and a lot of bands from America, of course, playing great stuff. So it was a great time, and I learned a hell of a lot about music and musicians.
What part of England was this?
This was in South London, in the county of Kent.
South London. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a unique place. In those days, I was about 4 foot tall, and I could walk under a table without banging my head. And I had this damn great drum hanging around my neck, which we had marching drums, which had a 5-inch depth, but we also had these heavier instruments that were like 10-inch, and I had the privilege of being the solo drummer for what they called the West Kent Battalion, and I played at the Royal Albert Hall when I was just 13. And this little guy with a drum as big as he had to march into the center of the hall and play a report on drums. And then 200 other drummers came in from 4 different sections, and we played this thing. So it was a real, great thing to do. And I really took drumming seriously. I mean, I was playing. When I come home from school at night, I'd play for 4 or 5 hours. And before I had a drum kit, I had sticks and I used to play on a telephone directory because with the telephone directory open, you got a similar bounce off the paper. But I've still got my original drum. My very first drum was 14 inches by 3 inches, and it was red glitter. I still own that. It's actually at my studio,
Mhm.
and I can't show you because I'm not there today. I'm actually living on a boat in Spain, and I'm calling you from
Hmm.
Spain. And
Oh.
yeah, and it's I don't have any Wi-Fi here, so I'm working on a telephone hotspot, and
Oh.
it's 4G. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping the video quality is coming across, but it's
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
yeah.
Good.
So anyway, that was the start, and I ended up with a group. I left school at 15. I'd had a general education, what they call a comprehensive education. I didn't make grammar school, which is a shame, because I was living in the town of Dartford, and Dartford was famous for its grammar school, where there was two lads a bit older than me, one called Mick Jagger and one called Keith Richards. And well, but I used to play with them of a lunchtime. They used to come over to our school. We went over to theirs. Um,
Hmm.
and it's quite funny because they were really wild, raucous, learning their craft, of course. They were a bit older than me. I mean, I'm 71 now, Mick's what, 75. So there's 4 years between us. But we still keep in touch. And his brother, um, um, Chris Jagger, he's a great folk and country guitar player,
Mm.
and I've looked after Chris's guitars as his guitar tech virtually all the time. So I still see him. But yeah, and I formed a group there, and I left school at 15 with just four basic qualifications. I didn't have a job straight away, and I was playing there with a band, and I was reading, and I was doing sessions, and I was with a lady called Marianne Faithful. I played drums with her, but I did support work, and I
Mhm.
played with the Yardbirds. That was a band of the. I'm talking 1964 now, and
I was a big Yardbirds fan. Big
yeah.
Yardbirds.
Well, of course, I was a support drummer for them, and that their drummer got in an accident. So I played with them one night. I remember it well. It was the 18th of December, 1964, and we had
Okay.
this, and we had this spotty face. I'll tell you why I know the date in a minute. Um, I had this spotty faced kid on guitar called Eric Clapton, who didn't stay very long. He didn't stay with the band, and they replaced him with another spotty faced kid called Jeff Beck. So
Yeah. And then
it was,
and then and then
yeah,
Jimmy Page came involved with the
of
band,
course.
right?
And so,
And in fact, I just posted an article last night because it was the
okay,
anniversary of the
yeah,
formation of Led Zeppelin.
there you are.
Okay, and it was I
Fantastic.
posted it last night, and they told the story how they got together. And when they first got together, they were going to be called the New Yardbirds.
Wow, listen to that.
Okay, and then they changed the name. They decided to change the name, and so when you get on Facebook, if you get a minute, check out
Yeah,
our
you
my
bet.
article I post. I love to post the old stuff about the
Yeah,
classic rock. I mean,
yeah.
I'm still like in 1969 and 1970. I'm a
No, no,
few years younger than you.
great.
I'm 68, so 3 years.
There you
So I
go.
understand. I actually remember and understand everything that we're discussing here. It's great.
Yeah,
It's really
that's brilliant.
wonderful. And
I, I
hey,
know.
I have a question. I have one
Yeah,
question before I
yeah, go ahead.
forget.
Yeah,
Um, did you ever meet Joe Meek?
yeah, of course. I mean, Joe was had a studio in Putney, which is
Right.
sort of northwest London. Um, yeah, and I mean, he was just a name in the business.
Right.
Um, Crazy the way he died,
Oh
and
yeah.
took his
I
own
saw.
life.
There's a great movie. Have you seen Telstar, the movie?
Yes, of course. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really good movie, and but he was very innovative
Oh, indeed. And I
in
mean,
recording.
I was getting into recording around that time. Of course, 63, 64, everything was still really mono. And there was this new invention called binaural sound, where you had two speakers, and every year there was a handbook of sound that came out, and in the appendix, I remember in '63, it said there's this new invention coming. It's probably not going to be successful. Some people call it stereo, but it's binaural sound. It's highly unlikely it will catch on because most places don't have one good amplifier and speaker, let alone having two that are matched. So interesting, but
That's
great
great.
times.
That's great.
And
That's great.
yeah,
Uh,
and
uh,
go on, please.
I got my first studio experience was as a little kid. My best friend. I grew up in New York City, in Queens, New York, and
Mhm.
uh, we call them blocks. With the streets.
Well, yeah.
So on the block, my friend Peter, his uncle was a Mexican, and
Okay.
and he had a record shop in Spanish Harlem, and
Yep.
because of the lack of material, for his constituents, for his
Yeah. I love
customers,
it.
he
Yeah.
opened his own recording studio
Wow.
and recorded people as famous as Desi Arnaz. Okay,
Yeah.
the recording studio was around the corner from where we lived.
Wow.
He got hold of his abandoned factory, and
Yep.
so I went to my first quote unquote recording studio, and it
Got
was
it.
very basic, just like you said. It had Shure mixers,
Yeah.
the little portable ones that in mono or mono recording.
Yeah. Of
Anyway,
course.
back in the '50s. So I mean, and I didn't know what the heck it was, but I
Yeah.
liked the music, so it was cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course.
anyway, so what inspired you to get into recording and audio design? And I mean, because that's pretty complicated stuff, audio design. How
Yeah.
did you get training for that?
Yeah.
What was your first involvement?
Yeah. I mean, prior to getting into audio, I was a keen hobbyist, and I had a shed, a building in the backyard, and I had some ex war government department equipment. I had an oscilloscope that was called a 339, and I had an AVO meter, and I've still got it, AVO Mark 7 meter, for reading voltages and currents and resistance. And I used to build circuits that you bought in kit form. There was then
Okay.
an American, we had an
Yeah.
American company. Do you remember that, a company called Heathkit? And you could buy
Oh yeah, Heathkit. Yeah.
anything really, and you had to make it yourself, build it. That was great fun. And I used to build model control, 27 megahertz radio control for boats and aeroplanes. It was all tubes, of course, or valves, as we said. And
Mhm.
I got interested in audio, um, listening to two or three people that were sort of audiophiles in the area who used to have their windows open, and you could hear this wonderful bass. And I'd never heard this before. You could hear music with bass. And I knocked on one of the guy's doors, and I was probably, I don't know, 13 or something. And I said, "Excuse me, can I come in and hear this?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." And the great thing was, I'd never heard HF before, and it was characteristic because it had hiss. And
Mm.
so whenever I heard a speaker system where you could hear this, it sounded like hi-fi. I spent the rest of my life trying to get rid of it, but no, I mean it was a great thing, and if you could hear full bass and full hiss, that was really exciting. Um, and I wanted to get in there, and I bought some kits of audio, and they were 30-watt amplifiers, and they were kit form. You had to assemble them, and I really got into them. And I thought once I got one built, I realized that I could play around with capacitors and resistors and make the sound different. Modify the tone controls and whatever. And that's really what got me into it. And of course, this business of playing drums was the start. My first tape recorder I had that was hi-fi was called a Grundig. It was a German-made machine.
Yes,
It
I've
was
heard of it. I heard of it. I've
the
heard of it.
TK 14. I remember it. only mono. Um, but it was great, and it had this magic eye on the front, which was the level indicator, and the two bands got closer together, and that was my first recorder.
Hmm.
And then I realized that there was some professional stuff, and I bought a ferrograph, which was a really beautiful machine. Again, if you could run at 7.5 inches per second, that was real hi-fi. Most systems domestically were running at 3.75. And I went out to see a guy, and he said, "You know, you got that ferrograph?" He said, "I had turned up a little sleeve that goes over the capstan, and it runs at 15 inches per second, and the sound is outrageous." And he said, "If you want one of those sleeves, I can get it for you." Now, when you work it out, that my first salary when I went to work as an apprentice was £3.14 and a penny, which by today's standards was about $5. He wanted $20 for this sleeve. So it was 4 weeks' wages, but I got one, and it was fantastic. You know, here I am now. I've got this 15 inch per second machine. But no, I got really bitten by audio. I mean, when you hear good audio, it's stunning. And of course, in those days, there was lots of live bands, and those live bands were getting bigger lineups. And of course, to hear uh, real acoustic brass. You know, the effect of a trumpet or a trombone, the bell, and the sharpness of the harmonics. And I was really bitten, and I said, right, this is something I want to do. I want to be able to record it nicely. Um, and I did. I bought some microphones. I've still got two Shure 55S, the Skull's Head. I've still
Hmm.
got those, and they're still good. Um, you turned them over, and underneath there was this impedance selector, high, medium, and low. Low was no good in those days because I didn't have proper mic trees, and the output level was so low. But if you put them on high, yeah, great. It was a high impedance mic and a
Hmm.
very good sound. And of course,
I think I had one of those Shure
yeah,
microphones. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know if it's the same model. I don't recall any impedance switch on it. It was
yeah,
probably more of a commercial and later
yeah.
model.
Yeah, I've
But
still got them.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
a skull's head, silver skull. And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I remember it. Yeah,
so
great.
I got bitten, and
Hmm.
I was lucky because we had in the town where I lived, at Dartford, there was a company that had started in 1957 called Vox, and they advertised for student apprentices to go and work there. And I went for an interview and got the job.
Hmm.
And as I say, it didn't pay any money. It was like £3 a week, but it was great because it was a start. And when I got there, I met the boss, a guy called Tom Jennings, who started the company. And I thought that they were choosing me because I had some wonderful talent, but in fact, they chose me because the British government were giving tax relief if you employed a kid. So that's the only reason.